Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Lily. I am so happy that you're here with me. In today's video, I have the most requested how-to process in my YouTube channel, and I'm going to share that with you. It has everything to do with a little golden book, and it is a lengthy video, so hold on tight because I have so much information to share with you. You are going to enjoy this. I am giving you everything that you have asked for regarding my little golden book junk journals, and I'm going to give it to you step by step, super thorough, lots of great information, lots of tips that will help you so that you can create your little golden book junk journal, but not just any little golden book. It's how I save the golden spine. Now, I do have a separate video showing you how I do this, but I am going to take all of your questions and I'm going to bring it to you in one video. This is something that I enjoyed doing, creating this for you, and I know you are going to love it. Grab yourself a cuppa because we're going to go through all of the steps. Step 1, how I save the golden spine. Step 2, the process of paper selection and how I reuse the storybook pages. Step 3 is I'm going to show you how I create and use a template for binding the signatures and making the little holes. And then the fourth step is binding those signatures. So 4 very in-depth, very thorough steps that will help you so that you can create a little golden book. A little backstory. When I decided I wanted to create junk journals with the little golden book storybooks, I wanted to preserve the golden spine, and I didn't see anything out there showing me how to do it. So I came up with my own method, and we don't cut this out. We save it. I think it's an important part of the little golden book, so we're not going to get rid of it. We are going to keep it, and oh, it's so gorgeous. I know you've seen flip-throughs of my little golden book junk journals, so this is going to give you step-by-step instruction so that you can create your own. And all I'm going to ask from you is that you support my channel by liking this video, subscribing to my YouTube channel, commenting in the section below, even if it's just a heart emoji. I would appreciate that with all of my heart. And then more than anything, if you can share my video with your family and friends, that would be amazing. I am here to provide you with as much free content as I possibly can. I'm going to share with you all of the techniques that I use for my own personal junk journals and the ones I sell in my Etsy shop. I think you're going to enjoy this, so buckle up. Let's go.
Let me begin by showing you the 5 different Christmas books that I plan on altering. 4 of them are little golden books, but then one of them was a really fun find, and it is a Happy Day book. This one doesn't have a golden spine, but it has a beautiful silver spine that I am also going to save. In this video, however, I am only going to work on one little golden book, and it is this red one titled Jingle Bells. And like I mentioned earlier, I am going to take you through the entire process. The very first thing that I do is inspect the book. I do look them over when I purchase them, and most of these are purchased at thrift stores. However, I have bought some on Etsy as well, and then my sister has gifted me some. But these in particular, I think I got them all at a thrift store, but don't quote me on that. I can't remember. So this one has an old price sticker on that front cover, and I'm going to carefully remove it. I'm using the bone folder to oh so gently kind of lift the sticker, and then I'm going to take this rubber eraser which also removes adhesive, and I'm going to go back and forth between the two very carefully because I don't want to damage the cover itself. And so this process took me about 10 minutes to do. And if it had the actual price on it and the price sticker was intact, I would have probably left it. But this just had residue of a sticker. So I spent some time and cleared it all up. And you can see all the little bits and pieces of sticker that I managed to remove. And so just take your time if you have an issue like this. If you don't want to deal with a blemish like that, you can always cover it with some other type of embellishment. I'm now going to take a cloth, and this one is almost dry. A little bit of water is on it, but almost dry. And I'm going to give it just a very quick clean up. Not too much because we don't want to wet the cover and risk rubbing some of the print off. So just almost like you do dry painting, this is dry cleaning. And just giving it a dusting. This is old. This book, I believe, is from 1964, and so it's been loved for a long time. I'm going to leave the name of the person, the child that owned it. And now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the center of the signatures. There are 2 signatures in the little golden books. And there's a total of 6 pages that are folded in half. Each signature consists of 3 pages folded in half. So with my bone folder, I am going to locate the center of the book and then aim my bone folder to where I think the staple is. The signatures are held together with staples. And I can't pull the staple out because it is taped under the golden spine. And so the only way to loosen that staple is to go right in the center of the book and then wiggle your way through very gently. Again, this process took me, I want to say, another 10 minutes to do. What you want to avoid is piercing. So if you're using a bone folder, you want to avoid piercing the golden spine. And so I'm holding with my left hand. I'm holding it on the spine to make sure I can feel and prevent the bone folder from going through. So I'm locating the staple and then wiggling it to loosen the tines that penetrate through the papers. And so I'm going to go very gently because I don't want to tear the pages. And you could see here I have freed the tines from the staple, and I will do the same on the opposite side. I do ever so gently spread open the center part little by little as I'm wiggling. And that's how I'm able to release those tines. And then very gently I start removing the papers. And so this is where you can tell that how the papers or the signatures are stapled into the spine. Now there is right in the center of the spine, there is a little bit of adhesive. Not only are the signatures being held with a staple, but also with a bit of glue that runs down the center of that spine. And when I'm removing these pages, I am being so careful because I don't want to tear the pages. Now, some of these older books, sometimes the glue dries and you don't have any issue with removing them. They come apart super easy. But this one gave me a little bit of trouble. Some of that glue was still pretty strong and it held onto the pages. And so I'm, again, just going to take my time and wiggle those papers free without tearing them. Worst case scenario, you tear your page as you're removing it. Don't stress over that because you can repair it by using tape, washi tape, masking tape, even clear tape to kind of fuse those pages together. But just be really careful, especially when you could see that the glue is still holding on to those papers. And I used my bone folder to release the glue and release the papers from the glue, and then just kind of running it or rubbing it across the bottom edge of the papers, and that seemed to help to loosen it up. So I'm pulling very gently and then using my bone folder to kind of go underneath the papers to release it. Take your time. Like I said, it took me about 10 minutes. I was going to say 10 minutes. 10 minutes to release the papers, and now they are free. And I also like to go through the pages so I know what my color palette is going to be, especially when it comes time to select the papers for the signatures. And this is where you can see there are a total of 6 storybook pages that have been folded in half, 3 pages each for its signature. And now we have to deal with the tines of the staple. I want you to see on the other side, just to make sure that I didn't pierce it through, that it is intact. If you did pierce it through, no worries, because we'll be able to save it in a future step. So now you have a couple options when it comes to dealing with the tines of the staple. I go both ways with this. I'll take some pliers with the little snippy tool that is flush to the pliers, because if I'm going to snip the tines, I want to make sure that I get as flush or as level with the inside cover so that there's no little pokey tine coming through. I'm putting my hand over the pliers just in case that little tine wants to jump up. I'm also wearing glasses to prevent any flying debris. So just put your hand over it. My little pliers are magnetic, and so it's kind of holding on to that tine. And then I set it aside because I want to make sure that I'm going to put these tines in the garbage. Sometimes I walk barefoot in my craft area, and so you want to prevent getting hurt. And so see how my little cutting tool is flush with the cardboard? The other pliers, it was not. The cutting tool was right in the center of the pliers, and so that wouldn't have worked. So if you do this option, make sure your pliers, the cutting tool is flush to the edge of your plier tool. I hope that makes sense. The other thing that you can do that I did not demonstrate here, but I will give you a visual, instead of cutting them, and here's where I'm going to take them and make sure to throw them away. The other option is you can take a small hammer. If you don't want to cut the tines, take a small hammer and you can fold them down. So I'm going to demonstrate right now that you can just press them down, put those tines back down if you don't want to cut them. So you have 2 options, okay? Sometimes the easier is to just fold them down with a small hammer and make it flush with the inside cover. That's probably the better option. We're going to cover it, so it really doesn't matter what you decide, whether to cut it or to fold them down. Now, the very center of this spine has a little gap, and I'm going to remove some of the excess paper. I'm just going to clean it up a little bit, but you can see that center section there where the spine is. That is a little gap, and that's what held the signatures in place. So there's no chipboard down that center. I'm cleaning it up because I am going to add a very thin chipboard into that section to strengthen that spine. And that little section is about 1/8 of an inch. If I don't do this, and this is just one of the steps to make that spine a little sturdier. Otherwise, it's going to concertina on you or accordion fold on you. And so I clean it up, and now I'm going to measure the width of that little gap, and it's 2/16 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to fill it with just some chipboard that I have in my stash. This was probably from the back of a paper pad. I save all that stuff. You just never know when it's going to come in handy. And I am cutting a sliver that is 1/8 of an inch wide, and I'm going to trim it down to 8 inches as well, but only after I glue it down to that center. With my bone folder, I am going to make sure that it fits neatly into that gap. And then once I determine that it's going to fit perfect and I don't need to make any other adjustments or cuts, I'm going to run a bead of my art glitter glue right down that center section, and then reposition that strip to hold it in place. And then with my bone folder, I will make sure that it's tucked neatly into that section. And this is one of the steps that will help prevent your spine from tri-folding, because if you can look, you can see you have the spine has the two folds on the left and the right hand side, but then with this section down the middle, that's like a third fold. You have to strengthen it or it's going to accordion fold on you. There's going to be one more step to further strengthen that spine. So now I'm just trimming the excess. This little golden book is 8 inches in length. And so now you could see how I have filled in that gap. Super important part so that your spine is completely level and even and you don't have a dip with your finished book. So now the next step is I'm going to grab some of that same chipboard, and now I'm going to cut it down to the width of that spine. And the width of this spine is about 1 inch, about 1 2/16 of an inch, or 1 1/8 of an inch, and 8 inches in length. And I'll trim that down to 8 inches in just a moment. I'm checking the width of it to make sure that my front and back cover will be able to open and close. If I had cut it just a little bit too wide, then I would take it back to my cutter and then trim off the excess. So now I just trimmed that excess off to make sure it is 8 inches long. Repositioning it to make sure it is perfect. And if you need to make adjustments at this point, then, you know, if it's too narrow or too wide, then just do it again until you get it to the right size. I'm going to use a strong bonding glue. This is my favorite glue. It is the Ultimate Glue. I'm adding a little bit to the chipboard and also a little bit to the inside spine. And I will position it again, and I'll check the back cover and then the front cover to make sure it moves freely. We want to make sure if you make this too wide, it'll prevent your cover from opening and closing. So I let that dry for a moment, and I'm going to grab my book binding tape. It is a 4-inch Scotch tape. It is clear, it is wide, it is perfect for this. But if you don't have this Scotch tape, you can also use regular packaging tape. You'll just have to double up on it because that one is only 2 inches wide. I really like the Scotch tape because it is clear and it is meant specifically for binding your books. And I do have an Amazon storefront. If you're interested in this, I'll have that link for you down below, okay? But packaging tape, I used that for years. And it was only just recently that I discovered this clear one. So now I am going to line the inside with the bookbinding tape. There is another step that I kind of missed, but it is optional. Before you run your tape on the inside cover, you can use decorative paper over the chipboard to make it more decorative, and I didn't do that. I have done that in other books, but I completely skipped that part. But you could do that, so that instead of seeing the chipboard through the plastic tape, you'll see a more decorative paper. I like to use something with the gold foil in it. But no worries, it's still good. And so now I am taking a scraper tool. You can also use your bone folder and smooth out the tape. And now I'm going to trim the excess on the tape, but I'm not going to go flush to the cover. I'm going to leave a little bit of the excess tape, and I am going to fold it over to the front side of the book. It just makes it easier this way, and it leaves you a nice finished edge. Doing the same on the opposite side and just folding it over. The next step, we'll do the same thing that we did with the inside of the cover. I will run the Scotch tape on the outside. And so just making sure that everything is smoothed down, there's no dust, there's no threads anywhere on the cover, because that would be a disaster. So make sure that you don't have any of that that'll get sandwiched between your book and the plastic tape. So now positioning it, this 4-inch tape works perfect because it'll cover the 1-inch spine, plus you'll have even amounts of tape on each side, making it sturdy enough so it won't lift when you open and close your covers. And that's one of the reasons why I love this 4-inch tape. You could do the same with the packaging tape. You just have to double it up. And I do have another video where I show you just how to save the golden spine. And in that video, I do use packaging tape. I'm going to trim, I got lucky right here because there was a wrinkle in the tape, but I didn't press it down. So lucky it didn't tear the cover. So be very careful with this part. You don't want any wrinkles, and you don't want to have to lift it because you risk tearing the cover. Again, taking my scraping tool, or you can use your bone folder, smoothing everything out, getting into the creases. And now I'm going to do the same, and I'm going to fold over the plastic tape. I'm going to cut a little bit of the excess because I got my fingerprints on it. Otherwise, I would have left it. And it picked up some dust from my glass mat. So again, make sure you don't have that your work area is dust free and thread free. And now folding it over again, making sure everything is nice and smooth. I personally don't mind that there is a gloss finish on the Scotch tape. That doesn't bother me at all, because I know that this is a step in order to save that golden spine, which I love to do. And there you go. It is a very subtle gloss, but believe me, it is so worth it. And so now just very gently opening and closing the front and back cover to make sure that it moves freely. And before I did this, you saw that I really pressed down on the Scotch tape so that there isn't any lifting. And that, my friends, is how I save the golden spine. And so now the next step, this is fun. It is the paper selection. And this is kind of controversial, okay? Because you have a couple options. I am going to show you my method of doing things. And this will inspire you to create and do things your own way. But this is how I do it. Notice how the paper, now that I've saved the golden spine, the papers, the storybook pages kind of protrude about 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to cut that. Did you just gasp? I am going to cut that. You have the option of folding it, okay? If you don't want to cut those pages, you can fold them in however long it protrudes from your pages, which is about 3/4 of an inch. But when these are background pages. We're going to embellish and journal and add pictures and memorabilia to the pages. They are background pages. If I wanted to save the storybook, I would have never altered it, okay? So you have to keep that in mind. I use these, especially older ones that are somewhat damaged in use. I alter these. I also have a collection that I will never alter. And so you decide. So here we go. I'm taking my Fiskars cutter. This is the best way for me to cut the excess to the exact width of the book. And the cover measures about 5 7/8 wide. Just making sure that my measurements were correct. And then I just trimmed it. I trimmed off about 3/4 of an inch. And it didn't take much from the story. Maybe a few letters here and there. But again, these are background pages, okay? Don't come at me. And now you could see how I'm, again, going through the color theme of the storybook pages. And now I'm going to separate each signature. Remember, there are 2 signatures in the little golden books. So I am separating the first and the second signature, and now I am going to put together the papers that I've selected in coordinating colors. This process is a lot of fun because I get to go through my entire paper stash selecting papers. For the signature covers, I like to use a heavier cardstock and usually with gold foil. And these are going to be the covers for each of these signatures. And these are papers that I picked up. They are by Paper Studio, and that is a brand from Hobby Lobby. I love this gold foil music sheet paper and also the snowflake paper. And I'll trim those down in a moment to size. I'll go through all of the papers that I have selected. And the majority of the papers are scrapbook papers. But I also have this letterhead paper. I've had this for a while. I picked that up in a pack at a thrift store. And then the signature pages are all a lighter weight paper. The only ones that are a heavier cardstock are the 2 covers for the signature. And I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. And you'll notice how all of these papers all have a winter, Christmas, holiday theme. And they coordinate well with the colors in the storybook. That's really important because you want it to be you want it to match, you want it to look cohesive. And so make sure that you go through the color theme of the storybooks before selecting your papers. And so I have 3 papers in each signature from the storybook. And now I'm going to use 7 of the scrapbooking papers. And then I'm going to grab a couple of these grungy papers, stained papers that I made. I have a video showing you how I do these. So I'm only going to grab 2 of these, 1 for each signature. All in all, there are 10 pages in each signature plus the paper that I used for the signature cover. So 11, okay? 22 pages total, including the signature covers. So now I am folding all of my papers. And there is a method here. I am making sure that each signature gets an equal amount of papers and also that they coordinate. Before I fold the 12 by 12 papers, I'm going to cut them down to size. So my storybook papers measure 11.5 inches wide by 8 inches. I am going to trim the 12 by 12 scrapbooking papers down to size before I fold them. I could do it after, but I prefer to do it beforehand because then I'll have a strip of paper or an offcut that I can use for other projects and it's not folded. But you can do it either way. You can fold your papers first and then cut, or cut them down to size before folding them. So now that I have cut them down to size, I will fold them in half, and this will leave me with a paper that is the same size of the storybook pages that will fit nicely into the cover. And so I fold one, and this is where I make sure that if I have 2 plaids, each signature will get 1 plaid. If I have 2 scrapbooking papers that have Christmas trees, Each one will get Christmas tree. So I'm just making sure that that each signature has similar designs, and I don't double up on the papers in each signature. Hope that makes sense. So I'm just pointing out and counting the papers. So right here I have 10 papers. 3 storybook, 7 of the scrapbooking, and this one right here will be the cover, which makes it 11. Also trimming that to size. Make sure that when you cut these, that you're cutting in the right direction. I have my music paper, and so the music print, so I want to make sure that I'm cutting it in the direction I want it to show. And again, I trimmed this one down 11.5 by 8 inches and now folding it in half. So the gold foil cardstock paper is the signature cover, and now I begin to layer all of my papers. And because I chose papers in coordinating colors, I don't have to overthink the placement because they're all going to match. Sometimes you'll have decorative papers that match up so perfectly with the storybook pages. So work or do what works for you. You just want to make sure that everything, flows nicely. And so I'm doing about two or three decorative papers, and then I insert a storybook paper. And I have them I set them up this way just so I can see where I'm placing the storybook and making sure that everything looks cohesive. And then I'm just layering and sandwiching one in the other. This center page, I will make sure that it is folded so that when you open the journal, the center of the signature will show a decorative paper and not white. Do you know what I mean? Like I just did. And at the very end, I'm going to do a quick flip through of all of the pages so you can see how nicely they look together. A couple of the papers are longer than 8 inches. And I go back and forth to make sure that everything is matching up. And you could see how 2 of the pages had a little bit of excess paper. So I'm just going to trim. And that was about half an inch that I'm trimming off the top. And look at how nice that center page looks. So it looks really nice. I make sure that my signature cover is pretty with gold foil, and I also make sure that I use a decorative paper in the middle of the signatures. These 2 papers are the ones that are a little bit longer than 8 inches, so I'm just going to go ahead and trim those for that second signature. This one, though, I want to make sure it's even at the top and at the bottom. So even though I have to trim half an inch, I'm only going to trim a quarter of an inch on the top and the bottom. And this will make it so that it's even at the top and the bottom. Or I could have just chopped off half an inch off the top, but then it wouldn't have looked balanced. Okay, so now I have the second signature, and I am going to begin and compile the pages for this one as well. And this is my cover. I like to use a sturdier cardstock for the covers. It makes it so that my pages aren't too floppy and they're kind of held together. Especially because that very first signature, I like to paper clip one of my signature Little House envelope pockets with a paper clip, and those tend to be a little bit heavy. So the heavier cardstock is able to hold the weight of my Little House envelope pocket. If you haven't seen how I do that, I will link a playlist right here of my journals that I have made, so you can see how I add a Little House envelope pocket to the journals that I make. So again, I am folding that center page with the decorative side up, making sure everything lines up, making sure all the pages are facing the right direction. You know, there is a lot of flipping. Oh, see how that one coordinates? How the trees coordinated with the storybook? That's always fun. I didn't even plan that. But make sure that all of your papers are facing the same direction. I have done it many times, and I'll probably continue to make that mistake where I get to the point where I am sewing in the signatures and papers are upside down. So just make sure everything is in the same direction. I am going to use a template to mark the holes on the spine and also mark the holes on the signatures. These are templates that I have already made, and I've had these now for a couple years. These are typically the sizes that I like to work, and I like to do 2 signatures in all my journals, whether they are 1-inch wide spine or a 2-inch spine. I don't like to do more than a 2-inch spine. I only do 2 signatures. So I know I already have a template that is the perfect size for my little golden books, but I'm going to quickly show you how you can create an easy template. The very first thing you want to do is cut down a strip of paper that is the size of your spine. So this one is 1 1/8 of an inch wide and 8 inches in length. So that is going to be the size of the strip of paper that you are going to cut down, making sure it is the exact same size of the spine. Next, you're going to fold it in half vertically because you want to make those creases. And then you're going to take the outside edge and fold it in about 1 inch. And now that you've made those folds, now you are going to fold it lengthwise, right down the middle. You also want to make that crease. And now you're going to fold it again, lengthwise, down the middle, lengthwise. Almost creating a concertina or an accordion fold. This is going to make you the marks on your template so you know exactly where you're going to mark your little holes. At that very top fold where the little crosses are, that is where you are going to mark your hole with a pen or a marker before you poke the hole through. You're going to do the same thing in the center. See where the crosses are? That is where you will mark for your little hole. And the same thing on that other edge. This fold actually allows you to have 3 signatures. So if you wanted to do 3 signatures, then you also mark a hole in that center fold between the 2 outer holes. Do you see that? So it's just really marking where the little crosses are, where all the folds meet, marking it with a pen, and then taking your awl or your little pokey tool and making a little hole. I've covered these in plastic so that they last a little bit longer. I hope that makes sense for you. Or I hope the way I explained it makes sense. But this is how I make my template for 2 signatures. I'm now going to position it over the spine, and I'm going to mark the little holes with my pen. You can use a fine tip Sharpie as well. That might make a more visible mark on the inside spine. But because I pressed hard with my pen, I could see where I made a little indentation. So I'm just going to go over it with my pen so it is clearly visible where I'm going to take my pokey tool or your awl to pierce the hole. I've had a lot of questions about piercing the holes. Remember, this is how I do it. If you do not want to pierce holes through the golden spine, then you can create the hidden spine, where your signatures are on the inside and not sewn through. But this is how I like to do it. And so I am piercing through the golden spine, but I sew my signatures in this way. I've not done a journal with a hidden spine. I'm going to be honest with you. I love making journals. I love it. It is so much fun. But my least favorite part is this part. The sewing of the signatures. So I'm poking the piercing tool, Craftalange. I am poking my little holes, and then I'm wiggling it around just a little bit to make that hole slightly bigger, because my needle is a little bit bigger than this pokey hole, and so I want to make sure that it goes through nicely. And so it's my least favorite part because it's more tedious. And if you don't make that hole just slightly bigger than your needle, oh, it's going to hurt. You're going to bruise your fingertips trying to get that needle through the little hole. And so the next part is I am going to also pierce the holes through the signature. And I'm going to take that first set of holes on my template. I'm going to take the template and I'm going to pinch it on the inside of that first signature. The first set of holes are for the first signature, so it lines up with the first set of holes that you made on the spine. And now I'm going to press it in to make sure that it is lined up with the inside of the signature, and I'm going to clip it so it stays in place. Doing the same in the opposite side, taking a clip to hold the template in place. Lining up the template with the signature pages. I'm now going to take my pokey tool and I'm going to pierce the holes through all of the pages. Bringing my pages right side up, because the last thing I want to do is sew them in upside down. So check your pages as you move along. And now pierce your hole through the signature. I'm being careful with the way that I hold the signature, making sure that I don't poke my finger. It looks like my finger is right over the hole, but there is a little bit of a gap. And I'm aware of where that needle is or the pokey tool is coming through to avoid poking my hand. So be careful with that. So now I move the clips over just slightly so that I can remove the template, but keeping all of the signature pages clipped together to keep those holes aligned. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the second signature. And now the second set of holes are going to line up with that second signature. I'm going to place the template right in the center, pinch it so it holds it in place. And then I'm going to press it up against the inside of the signature and clip it in place again, doing the same on the opposite side. Pressing it up against the inside and clipping it together. And now I'll take my pokey tool and make the holes. If you have any questions, please let me know down below. I've been doing it this way for a long time, and you know, it's easy for me, but if this is the first time you are going to do this and you have questions, please do not hesitate to leave a comment or a question in the section below. I reply to all of my comments within 24 hours, sometimes faster, sometimes within minutes. And now removing the template, but keeping the pages clipped together so that they don't shift. I want to make sure that all of the holes stay aligned. And now I'm going to take my needle, and I'm using a darner's needle. And this needle it's nice and big, and it makes it easy to hold. It has a large eye. This is really tough nylon string. And it is string that I picked up, nylon or not nylon, polyester string. And I picked this up at the thrift store a while back. And so I'm sorry I can't tell you what brand it is. It doesn't have any markings. You can use also linen wax thread and hemp thread and also embroidery floss. You just want to make sure that it is a strong cording or thread. Something not too thick, because you don't want it, once you tie that knot in the center of the signature, and you'll see what I'm talking about, you don't want that knot to be too bulky right in the center of the signature. So a thin but heavy string will be perfect for sewing in your signatures. And I'm not going to do a knot. I just threaded it through and left the ends loose, one longer than the other. I'm now taking my needle through the center hole and threading it through the spine, leaving the tail. I'm not pulling it all the way through, leaving the tail on the right hand side on the inside of that signature, and now threading it through the bottom hole, through the spine, and then threading it through the bottom hole of the signature. This part can get really tricky. Try not to move your pages around. Make sure that they are clipped together, or you will not be able to get that needle through the center of the signature. So I'm very lucky that I was able to get that needle through the signature, because sometimes it'll only go through some of the pages, and so it's trial and error. Just keep at it. And that's one of the reasons why I keep the papers clipped together so that they don't shuffle around, making sure that the little holes stay in place. And now through the top hole and then back in through the center hole. Don't split the thread, which means once you bring it back through that center hole, you want to make sure that you don't pierce your needle through the string or thread that's already in there, because then it'll create a knot and you won't be able to pull it through. So going in through the center of the signature, making sure that it's going through all of the pages and right in the center. Again, trial and error. You just want to make sure it comes all the way through to the center. And now that you have both strings, now you can pull taut. You want to make sure that both ends are even, and then pull it taut. You'll check the strings on the opposite side of the spine to make sure they're not loose. And you just keep pulling very gently, because if you do pull hard enough, you will break the strings. So you want it taut but not tight. And I'm checking the length to make sure that they're both even, because once I get to decorating, I like to add beads. See how it's still loose? So I'm just going to keep pulling taut. And then once I feel that the strings are nice and taut on both the inside and the outside, I will tie a knot. And I have the strands on opposite sides of those center strings. And now when I tie my knot, it'll keep everything in place. And I just do a double knot. And that knot is going to be nice and tiny. If you use twine or cording that is really thick, it's going to make a bulky knot in your center of your signature. I don't like that. You guys, look what happened. Oh my gosh. Okay, I left this in the video so that you don't make this mistake. It happens to me many, many times, you guys. There's a paper that was left rogue. And I could have just left that paper out and thought, okay, I missed a page. No big deal. No one's going to know. But I'm going to know. And I'm going to do things right. So I'm going to do it all over again. I am going to, all of that work, you guys, remember I told you that this is my least favorite part? This is my least favorite part, sewing in the signatures. And the reason why it's my least favorite, because I have made this mistake so many times. And I double, triple, quadruple check. And even then, sometimes it's inevitable. These mistakes will get by you. So I am going to put the paper back into the signature, and I'm trying to be very careful that I don't misalign all of the holes that I've already made. I want to make sure the holes are where they need to be. So this part was tricky. So I took it apart, as you saw, put my loose paper back in there, and now I'm going to sew it back in. So if you needed a redo or you needed to watch how I thread, here we go. Let's do it again. So the moral of the story, double check, triple check, quadruple check as many times as you need to make sure that all of your papers are in the correct order, that they are not upside down, and that they are all going to be sewn in where they need to be sewn in. That's the point of this. And that's why I didn't edit it out. Showing you mistakes and all, because you know what? It will happen. So you could walk away from it. If this was going to be my personal journal, I would have probably just left it out. But I'm not keeping these journals. And so they need to be as best as possible. If I'm telling you that there are 20 or 22 pages in the journal, then there has to be that many. So now doing it all over again. Here's a little bit of an FYI for you. When I was little, I was left-handed. But then when I started grammar school, I was taught to use my right hand, because back in the day, we're talking about early 70s, 70s. I went to kindergarten in 1973, 74, and I was left-handed, but that was a big no-no back then. And so I was taught to use my right hand. And so now I consider myself somewhat ambidextrous, where I can use my left and my right hand. I can't write as well with my left. I did throughout junior high and high school. I would show my friends how I was able to write with both hands. But now my right hand is more dominant than my left hand. But there are so many things that I can still manipulate and handle with my left hand. And I kind of noticed that as I was going through this video, that I had really good control of the darner needle with my left hand. I kind of surprised myself with that. So just a little FYI about me. So there we go. Everything is now where it needs to be. Oh my gosh, that was so funny, you guys. That was so funny. So now I'm clipping the pages of that first one, just so that they don't get in the way. Keeps everything, makes it easier. And now I'm going to do the same with journal number 2. Believe me, I edited that part out of the video, but I thoroughly went through that second signature, making sure all of the pages were in the right order before sewing it in, because I didn't want to make that same mistake twice. At least not during this session. And again, threading it through, going in through the center, out through the center back, in through the bottom, right through the center of the signature, and pulling that out. Up through the top. This is a 3 a 3-hole stitch binding. I think that's what it's called. 3-hole stitch binding method. It is the easiest method to do if you are sewing in your signatures. And then in through the center. And I'll mention this again. Make sure that you don't split the thread. So when you insert the needle here, try to avoid going through the strings of the thread that is already in there. It'll create a knot. You'll have to start over. So avoid splitting the thread. And now I have the strings on opposite end of that center string. Pulling it taut, not tight. If you pull tight, you will risk tearing the pages and also breaking your string. So just pull it taut. Be patient, little by little. I edited this video so that it is under an hour. I know it's a long one. This entire process took me an hour and 45 minutes to do in real time, okay? Just so you know. But I also walked away to select the papers, and so that took a little bit of time. But all in all, about an hour and 45 minutes to create the cover. Tying a knot in that center page or the center signature. And ta-da! Yay! I have sewn in both signatures. Look at how beautiful that golden spine looks. And if you use a coordinating cord or string, it's almost invisible, but it looks beautiful. The Scotch tape makes it shine, so it looks even more golden. And I absolutely love the way these are going to turn out. I will be working on 5 of them. I don't decorate it today. Next time you see these journals, I will do a complete flip through with them all decorated. I will add book corners. I will add so many wonderful things. Little house envelope pockets, junk pockets, tucks and embellishments and so many things. They're going to look so, so beautiful. And now let's flip through the pages so you can see how nice all of the papers coordinate. And some of these just coordinated so well just by pure happenstance. And I'll point those out. See how the trees line up with the trees on the story? So that was really nice. But they look so pretty. A lot of these blank pages I will be decorating either with a stencil or stamping or adding pockets, adding trim, lots of different things. Stickers. I can't wait for you to see the finished project. So if you are not subscribed, subscribe so that you don't miss the future videos of these beautiful journals. See how this one coincides so well? That light blue looks so good with the decorative paper and the storybook. I'll cover all of the markings from the paper as well. And then here is the center. And then they just look so good together. The papers here, they coordinate so well. And you could, if you want, take extra time to make sure that all of your papers coordinate. I know I said I don't fuss over it too much. If you stick to a color palette, it's all going to look great. But sometimes I get lucky where they coordinate just perfectly. This is a really fun project, and I sure hope that you make some time during this holiday season to make your own journal or even make some of these as a gift. Thank you for being here with me until the very end. I appreciate you so much. You guys are awesome. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future content. And also, if you're here for the first time, thank you so much. I appreciate you with all my heart. You guys are awesome. Hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Bye.